Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your Amac podcast, Better for America. I'm thrilled today to have the privilege and time with a true friend of Amac, a friend of mine. She is a remarkable, decisive, a humble leader in the U.S. Congress, someone who never ceases to speak truth to power, and she continues to advance the values that most Americans believe in, even against the wind. Now, she recently stepped up to help Americans understand the real facts, stakes, and events in Ukraine and Russia. And she's also the youngest Republican woman in Congress, representing Florida's 3rd district, and a real inspiration. Having grown up on a cattle ranch, she's a patriot who trained at the Naval War College, serves on the Homeland Security Committee and the Pro-Life Caucus and other conservative congressional bodies. So with great admiration, welcome Congresswoman Kat Cammack. Kat, welcome. I'm so happy to have you back with us again.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back.
Really great. Kat, you've spoken out on so many important issues. You are a real leader, and we appreciate you here at AMAC. And I would like to ask you how you see many of the issues relating to the shocking invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Recently, you pointed out that among outrages tied to Biden's foreign policy, that they continue to import Russian oil, effectively financing this war. Your words seem to have been heard because they have now stopped that. So congratulations on that. But let me ask you, as you see this Russian invasion of Ukraine really dragging on, millions are fleeing, hundreds of Ukrainians are killed, thousands of Russian soldiers reportedly killed. How do you see this ending? What do you think we could be doing now, which perhaps we're not doing, to bring this to an end, to stop this humanitarian disaster?
Well, it's an incredibly, obviously, sad and horrific situation that we're witnessing play out in Ukraine. You know, it is 100% on Russia that they took the steps to actually invade with no justification. And at the end of the day, I think we're going to see that Ukraine will be victorious in pushing and driving Russia out of their country. But the thing that, I get asked a lot about is the role of the United States and how we are interfacing, and should we be doing more? Should we be doing less? And there's no shortage of opinions, and certainly across the country, especially on social media. One day folks are constitutional experts, next day they're MDs, and then, now everyone's a foreign policy expert. So it's tough as a legislator to really navigate what is a popular opinion versus what is fact. And I tell people all the time that what is happening, it's horrific. And it is truly horrific. From the humanitarian standpoint, we're seeing millions of people flee their homes into neighboring countries, and that just breaks your heart. You see the children that have been killed in one town. There's been close to 1,000 children that have been killed alone. It is going to go down in history as one of the most gruesome war scenes that we've seen, certainly in my lifetime. It invokes scenes of World War II for many. And when you think about what the United States knew and acted on, especially last year, the intelligence community had the intel spot on when it came to Putin's intentions. And so we knew last year that he had plans in place, that he had precursors as a justification for our invasion. And yet this administration delayed lethal aid. And to me, that is unacceptable, because we saw that with javelins, with stingers, we could actually take on, not we, but the Ukrainians could take on this Russian military. One of the big things that has been frustrating for me is the discussion surrounding a no-fly zone. A no-fly zone is not a piece of paper that people wave around and say, hey, Russia, you're not allowed to fly your airplanes around here. It's actually troops on the ground. It's boots in country shooting down Russian aircraft. And there's been a lot of talk here in the United States about whether or not the United States should impose a no-fly zone. I do not support a no-fly zone because I do not believe that American sons and daughters, mothers and fathers should be on the ground in Ukraine fighting against Russia, in large part because when you look at the DoD, we are the Department of Defense. And that would be an aggressive stance that we would take. And that would, quite honestly, spark World War III. Now, in some circles, that's a popular opinion. In some others, it's not. People say we need to go all in and we need to push back. And make no mistake, I believe that Putin is kind of like a rabid dog who's been backed into a corner, and he does not want to lose. I think that he's gone so far that he has to go all in, and this could continue to escalate beyond what I think people are prepared for. And so knowing that he has committed war crimes, knowing that he has used a thermobaric bomb, knowing that he is engaging in a multi-front aggression that includes cyber, it includes war crimes, it includes horrific crimes against humanity, make no mistake, he could escalate this into a nuclear situation. And so we want to be extraordinarily mindful of that. I think that Biden's carelessness with his words and actions has been a contributing factor to emboldening Putin. And that's why I think a strong Congress is so necessary now more than ever. People who are intent on doing the right thing for our nation first. Because when you don't have that thoughtful, conservative, pragmatic leadership at the table, you get what we have now. A bumbling, stumbling commander-in-chief, which I even struggle to use that term with Biden. But honestly, his lack of strength and projected strength and resolve has brought us here to this point. And so when we talk about America's response and what's to come, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. In the end, I do believe that Ukraine will be victorious, but there's going to be a long, nasty road ahead of us. And one thing that the United States should stop doing collectively as a united front is talking about our plans, because we are broadcasting to the world on the stage what we are going to do, what we're not going to do. And that has been really frustrating because you're giving away the playbook to our adversaries. So rather than score political points, I think we should be focusing on the policy and really having these tough family discussions up here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, really good point. Well said. I think we recognize, and I've said this before, Congresswoman, that the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan really embarrassed not just America's reputation on the world stage, but showed Putin exactly who was in charge, the kinds of people that were in charge. And you're right when you say that we've got an administration that must be emboldening the bully in the room. Because we see it just based on some of the remarks and the things that Biden and other officials have said. Now, I do want to ask you, because Russia or Putin seems to be on really a dead-end track. They're increasingly isolated. Putin's credibility seems to be sliding dramatically at home even, and, in Russia. And he has had leading members of his own inner circles resign. Others are being arrested or imprisoned. Somewhere between 7,000 and 15,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded. They're in this a little over a month. My question is, do you think that this could be a major political inflection point for Russia? Could the Russian people actually say, or those around Putin say, we've had enough? Because it doesn't look like they're winning.
And that's actually been something that we've been tracking, particularly in some of the classified briefings. What I can tell you that is forward facing is that there is an undercurrent taking place in Russia, in country. And there has been a tremendous effort by the Putin government and the Kremlin to suppress any protests. No matter how peaceful they may be, they are working very hard to suppress and control the narrative within Russia. The state-sponsored media rules and is king in country. And so it's really important that we monitor. But as far as what we're seeing within his own inner circle, the sanctions that we have imposed have had a tremendous impact on so many of his inner circle. So there's certainly conversations that are happening. We know, and again, forward-facing information, that there has been attempts to poison negotiators and those that are pursuing peace talks or ceasefires. These are all the same tricks that he has employed throughout the years against his political adversaries. I think it's going to take a while, personally, before any real serious, credible threat to the Kremlin comes forward. But there's no coming back from this. And certainly, if Russia is driven out of Ukraine, which I ultimately believe they will be, there's no spin that he can pursue that will end up saving his seat. We already know that his mistress, girlfriend, whatever you want to call her, she has a Swiss passport, as do their children. So he has evacuated them out of Russia. So that's a very telling sign that he isn't himself confident that he will be in power at the end of this, which again points to, I think he's going to do some very drastic, aggressive measures to ensure that he leaves it all on the table so that when it's all said and done, he's exhausted every option. I don't think he's going to go quietly. We'll say that.
Well, Congresswoman, I think so many Americans do worry about the rhetoric that they're hearing coming out of Putin, and even in our own media, because we're hearing words like chemical, biological, nuclear weapons, and those are words that we haven't heard for decades. And that would be, my gosh, a humanitarian disaster we've never seen before. So, do you realistically see that kind of thing happening, or do you think Putin is more likely to pull back, try to consolidate gains in eastern Ukraine and declare some sort of false victory? I mean, this would not stop his isolation politically or economically, but it might sort of still the waters. How do you see that potentially?
If you would have asked me this question years ago, I would have said that maybe he would have, at the end of the day, pulled back and claimed certain territories along the border region as you said, false victory, and called it a day. But I think that there is something inherently broken with this man. I think he is going to the mentality of damn the torpedoes, go big or go home, and thinking that he's going to have an ally in Chairman Xi, because China has been working hand in glove with Russia in supporting them, in avoiding sanctions, in helping plug in where they economically can, where the United States has pulled out. I think that he has a false sense of support in the world, and that's going to encourage and embolden him even more so, again, by the fact that this administration continues to perpetuate weakness, and rather than project strength, he being Biden, he has fumbled, bumbled, and really misspoke on multiple occasions, giving conflicting messages out of his administration. It doesn't take more than a quick switch of the channel on the TV to see the Pentagon and the DOD issuing one statement and then the White House issuing a conflicting one. That kind of behavior emboldens him. So I think he is going to go all the way. And by all the way, I think he's going to make a play for all of Ukraine, because for him, part of this, it's not just the economic jewel that Ukraine would represent for Russia. It is a historical, cultural reunification that he envisions, the rebuilding of the USSR. And so I think that there is an unreasonable goal that he has in mind that he will go all in on. So at the end of this, do I think he will be in power? No. But I do think that he is going to cause an immense amount of pain and suffering. And that is something that I don't believe that the world is prepared for.
Yeah. And we do know that even though the Biden administration's messaging has been confusing, to say the least, or contradictory, we are not likely to put American troops in Ukraine, but we know that deterrence matters. So we're putting great numbers of troops in, adjacent NATO countries. And we know Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, they're concerned. So my question to you is NATO united?
I've actually spoken with a few of our NATO allies and their diplomatic corps. And I do think you can broadly and safely say that NATO is united. That being said, I do have questions about Germany and their resolve in this fight. I also question the diplomatic relationships that we have. Deterrence, as you mentioned, is a major component to our response in this regard. And when you look at deterrence, the first step is having a strong diplomatic presence. The fact that this administration did not have an ambassador in country appointed and accepted to the Ukraine speaks volumes of the dysfunction of the Biden administration and reflects quite poorly on the United States and our ability to navigate the very complex nature that NATO currently is. I think that we have a long way to go in restoring the trust of our allies in the region, but also we need to be mindful that we have, through our own actions here domestically, suspending Keystone, refusing to green light permits for LNG and our energy resources, among other key commodities, that has turned the EU into a bastion, right, for picking for not so kind entities and nations like China or Russia, to make them, being EU and our NATO allies, dependent on them for critical commodities. And that is something that we have to have a long discussion, a family discussion here at home, and saying, we have this in abundance. We've refused to put America first. And as a result of America not being strong and productive and safe here at home, that in turn has made the rest of the world less safe because our allies have had to turn to our adversaries. So I think when you look at the NATO conversation with President Trump, I remember very vividly having conversations with NATO members saying, we're going to pay our fair share. And they were doing that because there was a projection of strength. That has now gone missing. And so we are paying for it. Ukraine is paying for it. And by extension, they are paying for it. There's going to be a long, long road to go in terms of rebuilding these critical partnerships and alliances moving forward.
Congresswoman, thank you so much. Appreciate all of your great insight there. I do want to pivot just a little bit. You're a former businesswoman. You grew up working hard. And you know the value of a dollar. And Americans are hurting today, boy, with the cost of everything going sky high. Biden's overspending, cutting off the energy sector. The list is long, but there are some basic policy solutions to some of the inflation that we're seeing, like a halt on runaway federal spending. My goodness, stop spending, reopen our energy production and exports, really rethink about how to help average consumers. And this is what our members are so concerned about. Really, I would like to turn to you and ask for your thoughts on where we're at. Our Americans are not confident about their future because they see what's happening. Can you expand a little bit more on what's driving this inflation and what should we be doing to sort of restore confidence right here in America?
Oh, well, you hit on the big one for me. And I don't know if there's enough time in this podcast to dive into all the things that we should be doing. But what I can tell you is what we have been doing, and this administration has been doing, is the opposite. When you look at what has encompassed the government spending at the federal level, just in 2021 alone, it's nearly $7 trillion. Now, granted, I do have a degree in economics, but it doesn't take someone with a degree in economics, maybe just even a little bit of common sense, to recognize that as the government spends more, we, the people, keep less. And this national debt that has been growing and accruing, this is the biggest national threat to our nation, to not just our children and our grandchildren. This is a national threat today and now. When you have inflation approaching 8%, I think it actually has hit 8% and projected to hit 10% by summer, you look at, are you going to pay for gas or groceries? And for folks that are on a fixed income, for folks that are retired, the COLA increase was wiped out immediately the minute that we crossed over into 5% inflation. So now people who have nowhere to turn, who are on fixed incomes, they are really getting squeezed the hardest. And this is all a direct result of runaway federal government spending. We are not going to spend our way into prosperity. We're not going to spend our way into security. What we have to do is get very serious about making the necessary reforms to the discretionary spending that has run away on programs that have no business being funded at the federal government level. This notion of the Green New Deal, where highways and buildings are racist. Give me a break. This is absolutely a political agenda that is based on nothing more than dependency and control. And how this plays out is by creating a nation of victims and people who are dependent on government so that big government elites in Washington can remain in control. We all know, and you know this oh so well, that victimhood is not a virtue, it is a condition. And the way to treat it is by a small government mentality and by having conservative leaders who are going to take a freaking machete and start slicing and dicing all this frivolous spending that has nothing to do with our constitutional duties as representatives of the people. This is something that we have got to tackle first and foremost. You know, Biden proposed a $5.8 trillion budget. When I started digging into it, it made me want to cry because it was an assault on our nation. It was an assault on our everyday life, our core values. And it really is a way for the left to go after an agenda that's not just dependency and control, but one of equal outcome rather than equal opportunity. And I could go on and on and on, but I'm telling you right now, when we take the House back, we're going to get this under control.
That's right. And you know, this is just such an honor to have you with us. We could talk about so many things. We could talk about so many of the Democrat policy failures, from the botched pull out of Afghanistan, killing women's sports, defunding police, opening up our borders. We see a wide open southern border. We know that's going to get work. Unprecedented federal spending. There's more overreach into people's private lives. It is something that it just doesn't feel like the same America 18 months ago, 2 years ago. I do have one final question because you are just so uniquely situated, I think, to answer this question. Our members, they understand the stakes. I mean, everything I just mentioned, they get it. Do you think that we can hold the line on many of these issues, including these foreign issues, whether it's China's intense effort to assert global power? We see all of these weak Biden policies. Can America emerge again as the world leader on so much of what matters?
Absolutely. I truly believe that we as Americans are some of the grittiest, scrappiest individuals on the planet. And we are renowned for being the underdog. And we do our best when we have our backs up against a wall and all odds against us. America is a place where anything is possible. And because we come from that mindset, we look at problems and challenges a little bit differently. So the greater the challenge, I think the greater the opportunity. And we are going to see the greatest renaissance, in my opinion, in American history here in the next few years. Because I truly believe that it almost took us getting to this very scary edge of socialism and big government and this new era of virtually communism in America being widely accepted, for so many people to wake up and say, this is not who we are. I don't want this for my family. I don't want this for my children. I don't want this for my grandkids. I don't want this for my business. I don't want this for my country. And I really do believe that you are seeing a tidal wave of folks from around the country who have said, I'm getting off the sidelines. It's not enough for me to just go vote anymore. I need to start paying attention to where I'm spending my dollars and how I'm spending my time, and really focusing on the basics that made this country so amazing. The pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, the notion of equal opportunity versus equal outcome. People are fighting to get back to those basics. And I really do think that that is just over the horizon. So we're going to get back to it for sure.
Well, Congresswoman, I want to thank you so much for your energy and your devotion to America and your time, because you are a real leader. You bring us so much hope as well as realism, and we are in your debt and always so grateful for your insights, courage, and your personal leadership. So many thanks for joining us, and we would love to have you back soon because you really deliver such an important perspective and a great message of hope and realism. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. To all the members out there, thank you guys for listening.
And I want to thank each and every one of you out there for tuning in today. If you haven't downloaded the Amac News app, you can watch, you can listen to this show. You can track breaking news right there from your smartphone. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share wherever you are on social media. Until next time, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here. God bless you. Have a great day. See you next time, everyone.
You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens. To learn more about Amac and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.